Great to have you here with us for our next session, The Future of Automotive Retail. Changes everywhere. Our next panel is discussing everything about it, and they are including the topics about sustainability, about electric vehicles, about the changing sales models. You could maybe think everything is changing, but I don't think everything is really changing. Let's see what they have brought with them. I'm talking about Maria Grazia Davino, Andreas Bachetti, Amy Marentik, Dr. Jakob Stöber, Dennis Morgenstern, and Scott Dicken. Please give a very warm welcome to them and a round of applause. Here we go.
Very good. In Q1 2020, we have seen 10 years of e-commerce growth in just 90 days. During the past 18 months, we all learned a lot, how to do business differently, both on consumer and on the brand side. Processes we didn't think were digitally possible or accepted were forced to be digitized. I bought a car 12 months ago. The first time I saw the car and touched the car was when I picked it up at the dealership. My information process before was with reviews and videos, but also with video conferences with the dealership. And they filled in the gaps, what I needed to know to make my decision. Was this process very professional or fully professionalized? No. Was it effective? Absolutely. The dealer used all tools at his disposal to make me feel informed, and he got the job done and sold me the car. For me, the process was fully customer-centric. A lot of businesses thrive right now because they use digital tools and they put the customer at the center. The process is seamless for the customer. In the complex auto industry we all work in, how do we get to a seamless customer experience? Let's find out together today and see what the future holds for automotive retail. My name is Dennis Morgenstern. I'm Global Automotive Solutions Lead at Google, and I'm your moderator for this session today. The future of automotive retail is our topic, and I am joined by a fabulous panel. Before we begin, some logistics. We have 2 lightning talks by Amy and Jacob, and then we'll get right into the discussion. The panel was already introduced, so I will not do that again. And to kick us off, before we go into the discussion, will be my colleague, Amy Marentik. Amy, over to you. I know it's early in the morning for you, so I hope you're awake and ready to go.
I am awake, Dennis, and I am ready to go. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent, excellent. Well, hello, everybody. It is such a pleasure to be here with you today. And we know the pandemic has placed people at home relying on their computers and their mobile devices to do more and more of their daily activities. In fact, look at me. I'm in my home in Plymouth, Michigan with all of you today. Winning companies are those companies that are meeting the consumer where they are most comfortable. And today, that is online, and many times at home. Now, there are 3 things that Google knows about the future of retail. The first, absolutely, customers want the ability to do more of their automotive purchase online. Now note, I didn't say all of it, but definitely more and more of it. And our data tells us that every year. We also know the process is complex, it is unique to each consumer, and the consumer needs help to simplify, and they need support on what can be an overwhelming journey. And we know that data and automation is the key to a better experience. The OEM and the dealer that work closest together to share data and to embrace automation will win by empowering consumers and providing them with a delightful purchase journey. Our data tells us that 63% of new vehicle buyers said that they decided on the actual vehicle that they would purchase before contacting or walking in to a dealership for the first time. Think about that. Their discovery and their decision-making process is happening online more than it isn't. But we know that customers still want to experience the vehicle in real life before they finalize the purchase. While online tools and experiences help them and support them, shoppers still want to touch the vehicle, feel the vehicle, sit in the vehicle, and really imagine their life with that vehicle before finalizing that purchase. Through the pandemic, we saw the industry adapting to new challenges. Dealers and automakers began to bring more of the purchase online, and customers ate it up. They used those tools at unprecedented rates. But it presented us with a challenge of how can we as an industry deliver a more personalized online experience, which is what the consumer expects. And it's in a world where consumers have limitless information right at their fingertips, on their mobile device, at their computer. What are these consumers doing? They are asking Google for help. We are seeing more and more generic searches. Searches like, how to find the right car for me? What is the best SUV? Or what is an electric vehicle? They're using more and more online sources. And in fact, in Germany, 7 out of 10 consumers discovered their vehicle online. I love this piece of data. In Q2 of this year, YouTube viewers in the UK watched 68 million hours of automotive content. That equates to 115 hours of automotive content watched in the UK for every new vehicle that was sold during that same period. As auto shoppers are utilizing more and more sources, consuming more and more content, it's not surprising that they are feeling so overwhelmed by the process that they are also searching for things like, which car should I buy quiz? And as an industry, we know that many of these can be solved by online purchasing. Now, how can automakers and dealers evolve their relationship to empower the consumer? The short answer is by using data as a superpower instead of a power play. At the end of the day, the in-person journey experience should complement the online journey. By sharing and connecting data and embracing automation, the industry can create a much more efficient consumer experience. Together, the OEM, the dealer, and partners like Google can work together to create an experience that allows the consumer to shop the way they want to shop. A seamless, omni-channel experience is truly what paves the road ahead to the future of automotive retail. Back to you, Dennis.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you for those insights. Next up, to give you another perspective, will be Jacob. Jacob is leading the automotive customer experience practice at McKinsey here in Munich, and will give us a short glimpse into the research they've done. Jacob.
Thank you, Dennis. And I hope it will not be another perspective, but it is a complementary perspective and really building on what Amy has already showed you. And what we have seen when we look at our customer research over the last year, and as the pandemic hit, we've started doing a lot of customer research to really see this pandemic and being in lockdown, how does that change customers' behaviors and customers' attitudes towards buying cars. And we've seen two big themes come together over this last year and fundamental changes enabled by those two themes. And that's on the one hand, the digitalization that has been driven by the pandemic and by being able to do things at home and not being able to go out. And the second thing that we've seen over the last year is really the uptick in people interested in buying electric cars, which has a fundamental effect on the customer journey that they are interested in. So when we look at how customers now perceive their customer journey and how they want to buy their car, there are really fundamental changes along the entire journey. So it starts in the beginning where, as Amy was already saying, customers, they go online, they search for their car online, but they don't only search for what is the next car that I should buy, they're also interested in things like charging. They are getting more and more interested in the electric vehicle experience overall, the sustainability aspects of it. So the starting point is usually quite different from what it was in the past, when customers were just looking to replace their previous model by maybe another family SUV, by another hatchback. Now it's really much more about this entire theme of being electric, being sustainability that is at the start of their customer journey. Then when the customers get to the stores, also there the information need that they have has become very different, because everybody knows a classic car. They know how to go to the petrol station to fill it up, but they don't necessarily know how the charging process for an electric vehicle works. So the questions that they have when they go to the dealerships have become very different, and customers feel like the dealerships are not always best positioned to answer their questions. So more and more they look at additional sources online, and they are also asking questions to dealers that I'm sure you never had to answer in the past. So I'm sure you never had a customer come to your dealership and ask you, well, the petrol that I will put into my car, is it sustainable? But now suddenly they will come and say, yeah, but when I charge the car, what about the electricity? Is it green electricity? So it's really new questions that dealers have not been faced with in the past that the customers are now asking. And then, of course, also when we are thinking about service, for example, customers got so used to that you can do things remotely, and we see that in our research also when we look at age groups, especially the age groups that in the past, pre-COVID, were not really considering going digital for a car purchase or going contactless for a service experience. Now, because they were forced to do it during COVID, they are much more interested in also doing that going forward. So in this combination of digital and electric vehicles becoming more and more important, we really see a change in how that customer journey plays out. But it's not a simple story of it changes in the same manner for everyone everywhere, and just customers go more digital and they will want to buy everything online. There's still very different customer types and customer groups. And we've identified several customer archetypes. I don't want to go into too much detail here, but just for example, if you look at customers more in big city areas and customers in rural areas, our research shows that the way they are thinking about their purchase, what is important to them, for example, whether they are interested in a subscription offer or not, is still very different. So it's not a one-size-fits-all approach that you can solve just by a digital solution. That's also why I firmly believe that dealers will always play a very important role in that customer journey, so that it's not only the scale, but also the personalization that customers expect. And I think there, as an industry, there's a lot of opportunity, and I think we will see a lot of interesting changes in the next years.
I would 100% agree with you, Jacob. We will see a lot of changes and very interesting things that play out. We can all agree that probably the automotive industry is the most interesting industry to be working in this time right now. So, thank you, Amy. Amy leads our global accounts and agencies in the US for automotive. And Jacob, thank you for your short presentation. Before we get into the discussion, let me tell you who else is on the panel with me and who you're talking to. Joining us virtually, we have Maria Grazia Davino, Head of Sales and Marketing in Large Europe at Stellantis. Welcome, Maria Grazia. We're glad to have you. Then, of course, also joining us virtually is Scott Dicken, European Commercial Director, Operations Director at Polestar. Great to see you, and great to have you, Scott. And here on stage, Andreas Bacchetti, head of the Opel Vauxhall Dealer Association and the CEO of the Bacchetti Group in Italy. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Would we have thought 18 months ago that having a panel like this on a stage like this and this size, being half virtual, half live, would be the norm? No, it would have rather been the exception than the norm. But we have seen so many panels playing virtual and live and in person. It shows how fast we've come this way and how much has changed. The higher customer expectations, the changes coming at us. My first question goes to you, Maria Grazia. You have a huge organization to maneuver on a European level and figuring out how retail will work for this organization. What are the key points and the biggest drivers of change you see in your organization, and how is Stellantis working on that?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting me and giving me this opportunity. In this industry, we are used to pressure. And this time, these pressures require to be agile. I shall say to immediately become agile. On one hand, you have digital technologies and communication that have changed society, and also the cognitive behavior of people, and so customer habits. I say this change in customer expectations apply to cars as well. If we look at the product environment as well and the product evolution, we have environmental sensitivity that is increasing heavily, and all related trends. These are dramatically changing the contents, the offers, the service, the demand, the constraints, and here I'm referring to infrastructure around mobility needs. I like always to remind to all of us that for mobility is about habits and routines. So the biggest driver, in my opinion, also touching what the colleagues have said so far and that you have introduced, so I underline that this is the new customer habits around mobility that require a high level of agility. And if somebody wants to help, I say, if you want to help, let's do a joint effort. Let's avoid too much restrictions and complications to make these changes happen.
Andreas, that's probably a good question, and to follow up with you. What changes have you seen in the last 18 months servicing customers at your dealership? What has worked? What worked well? What was still troubling you where we say, oh, that's something we have to look at, that's something we have to address?
Well, I think that let's say the customer habits already changed in the last years, because 10 years ago we had, I have to say, 10 visits for purchasing. A customer had 10 to 13 visits to purchase one car. Today he might do 2 visits or 1 visit in dealership. So this process has already been started, because the process of getting informed and doing the product choice already had been changed very much in the last few years. For sure, I think I don't see so much change in the customer behavior. I think it's more a change driven by the European laws. So the electrification is something we can't stop. That's for sure. It's indicated, and then I think all this way to electrification brings us to a high cost pressure. A high cost pressure which we, as the industry, faces with trying to put out complexity out of the business and cost out of the business. What does it mean? Reduce the model range, reduce the offer, be leaner in production. So for me now, the biggest demand is today, the biggest challenge was driven by the industry and by the regulation to convince the customer that he can also buy, or he needs to buy electric vehicle, even if he doesn't need one electric vehicle. No? So I'm a little bit cautious about giving the cause of everything which is happening now, discussing now, to the COVID time. It's not COVID. I think it's a combination of factors, especially when it comes to the real need to push a certain process given by the European community, which is the electrification. Because ask Norway, ask Italy, what will be, Norway hit 70% of electric cars sales last month. But if there wouldn't be that pressure and the support from the government, even in Italy, I think we still would be at 2%, because it's not a real need for today's customer to drive electric vehicles.
Very interesting point. And it does show that there is outside pressure we all have to deal with. It just adds to the complexity. But taking that step back to the consumer, who is also demanding a more seamless interaction from the communication from OEMs, from dealers, how do they work hand in hand? Taking complexity out of the business is a good cue. And Scott, I think you're the right person to talk about a little bit less complexity, because I'm so glad that we have such a diverse panel. We can pick from all sides of the industry, and we have it well represented. Polestar, your model range is limited. You start from a, I wouldn't say a fresh slate or a clean slate, but you start with less complexity from the start. And you're more or less going more direct to the consumer. How did the changing habits and how did the last 18 months impact your business? What are you seeing as trends also with regards to the pressure from the European Commission of having more electric vehicles?
Yeah, good morning, everybody, and yeah, morning, Dennis. First point, I completely agree with the comment around complexity, which is at every stage of the automotive industry. I think it'd be fair to say that the automotive industry is behind the game when it comes to digitization and working in a virtual environment. And the reason for that is multiple stakeholders. We are one of the most complex industries in terms of taking our products to market, and it just makes it difficult to integrate. It's not about technology, it's about integration of all of those places in the chain. And as you say, I think Polestar have got a benefit because we have started with a relative clean sheet of paper. And that's one of the challenges for more traditional retail sort of processes for a traditional OEM and franchise retail network. You're basically in a position where you have to rewire the plane whilst you're flying it. That makes things very, very complicated. Yeah, we're in a fortunate position that we've started with that clean sheet approach. So we have got that direct sales model. And that actually, the key benefit is it reduces complexity. There are less stakeholders in the process. It means that we have more transparency and we have that direct relationship with the customer. That said, there is still an absolute need, an absolute role for our investor partners, because it is still in a position where we have to integrate the physical and the virtual. High value purchases like cars, they still require an integration in terms of the physical environment. You want to create that passion. Customers want to see and touch high value products like cars. I think for me, we need to simplify, we need to take out the variance, whether it be in terms of the product offering, but also in terms of the service. How we do that, let's look at it through the customer journey. You know, what does the customer see? You know, how does a customer go through the process? Because we've got two key challenges that we're facing right now. Customers need to make the transition to EV, which absolutely will be driven by legislation. Customers at the moment, as we've just said, they don't see the need for EV products at this stage. And as much as we value sustainability, sustainability is still not priority for the majority of customers. The economic reality is the priority for the majority of customers. That will change over the coming decade as sustainability is forced into the forethought of everybody. And I think the other thing is, as well as transition to EV, is transition to this digital world, this omni-channel experience that we're all striving to, that seamless integration of physical and virtual, which I think the industry will converge in a similar space. We've got traditional sort of OEM retailer network moving towards an agency style model, and then you've got kind of a clean direct approach to the customer, and ultimately we will find a way in the middle, I think, that ultimately will improve customer experience, but also integrates a much cleaner value chain, because we need to look at the value chain across the whole industry in terms of where are the costs. We need to take cost out of the entire value chain such that there is sufficient revenue, sufficient profit opportunity to make a business model for all of the stakeholders.
Very good point. Taking the complexity out, but still keeping the customer in the center and providing that seamless experience. But I think that's the biggest hurdle we have right now. How do we get a process where we have so many different touch points the consumer can choose at will to go to the OEM website, to talk to the dealer in person, to go to the dealer website, to watch YouTube videos and all that? How do we get that into a process where you can make a decision? And when do we tackle exactly the customer with the right message? I would send it over to Amy. From the data we see at Google and also from the research we have seen, what is the highest customer demand when they look at buying a car? You said choice, right? Getting through the information. But what else drives the experience? And where are really the asks from the customer to help from dealers and OEMs hand in hand to help them make their decision?
They are asking a lot of generic questions. So you're not seeing them directly go in and search for a specific branded vehicle. You're seeing them go in and search for things like best EV, best SUV, right car for me. So they're asking for more generic information because they're searching so early in their process. And I agree with everything that Scott said and what Andreas said. It is a tipping point for EV, but typically what we see is search behavior increases around EV when we see some type of legislation. So when the legislators are pointing consumers to learn more about EVs because they know they're coming their way. In Germany, EV searches are up 50% year over year. Globally, EV searches are up 68% year over year. I do really believe we're at a tipping point, but consumers still do not understand electric vehicles. 38% of them say range is an issue, time to charge is a reason that they won't purchase. They believe, an Autopisa study actually said that consumers believe EVs are more complex to use. So customers are still learning and asking more and more questions. So making it easy, brands being able to tell their story when the customer asks about it is going to be incredibly important over the next few years as the industry is learning and shifting.
Telling the stories and helping make decisions. Maria Grazia, with all the brands at Stellantis, you have a lot of decisions to actually incorporate and a lot of consumers to please with the right information. What is your priority right now to deliver that information across the brands and also at the different touch points?
So I think that the point made about integration is very important. So the evolution towards electric vehicles, or the so-called electrification, is something that is pushed by legislation. But we have to get prepared also to the near future customers. We cannot neglect that young people that don't buy a bottle of water because they don't want to go for plastic. They will question also the sustainability of what they're going to buy. And in this sense, we have to build a consistent story addressing the brand legacy that are specific, but also keeping in mind that there is one story to be told, and this is a way to sustainability, a seamless experience, a light experience. I always say an offer has to be accessible, near, transparent, light, comprehensible, and so on. So it has to be something that is, we were speaking about user friendliness since decades right now, and a car offer has to be user friendly. We have to be near to these customers. This is the most important thing. To tackle this, your studies are very important. The experience of the dealers is very important, because at the end of the day, it is always a trade-off between physical and digital experience. And we are all learning. And the complexity here is that we have to deliver while learning, under the pressure of the costs increase and the legislation pressure as well. So
I really like the saying that Scott said, rewiring the plane while we're flying it. That pretty much sums it up very well. Andreas, if the customers now come to you, now taking aside that maybe the EV, that the need for EV is not their own idea, but actually something that is pushed towards them, how do you see tying into the information that comes from a brand and the consumer coming to you very informed? What is your way in your automotive group, in your dealer group, to tackle that? How do you educate your salespeople? How did you change since consumers come so prepared? How do you sell the car, and what is it that you need actually to make that well?
I think the big challenge nowadays is that we are in a perfect transformation, because we have more than one issue which gives us uncertainty. We have, first of all, technology uncertainty. So 3 years ago, 5 years ago, everybody came in the showroom and said, I want a diesel. Okay? So today, nobody knows which technology should he buy. Because me neither. I don't know which technology will win. There might be electrification, but which electric technology will win? We don't know. So every investment you make today might be a wrong investment. So this, and if a customer comes into your showroom, you know, it's not like going to, let's say, a food shop where you see, oh, now I'm gonna take a perfect pastry or whatever. You have to imagine that the customer comes in and he has a big burden on his shoulders, which is his saving of the last 10 years or 5 years, depends on the economic power of the customer. He needs to justify why he took this specific decision. He has to justify it before his wife, his kids, his neighborhoods, and his relatives. So, and actually, we have so much uncertainty in the process, technology-wise, legislation-wise, delivery times-wise, and mobility concept-wise. So really now the biggest change is to educate our salesmen in saying, okay, we try. It's not an easy job. We try to provide them as much as possible tools or Schubladen, drawers, in order to open the right one based on what he perceives from a customer he needs right now. And here is another problem of the industry. We as a dealer or as an industry, we are not attractive. We are not attractive for employees because the cost and the pressure is so high. You have to work a lot of hours. You have to open weekends. We are not family friendly as an industry. Okay, so to attract qualified people which are able to face this wide range of complexity in order to be able to open the right doors in front of, should I buy an EV, should I buy diesel, should I rent it, should I buy it, should I cash it, should I have a balloon deal?
But Andreas, that actually opens up the next question: what do we have to do to become more attractive, right? And what can we do to actually show a workplace which is future-oriented, fun, and actually incorporates a seamless customer experience, and a salesperson being the center of it, actually providing a customer experience? Jacob, when you talk to, you have many different clients, right? OEM-wise and also dealership-wise. What do you see as capabilities which might have to be improved or have to build up? Maybe we don't have them in the industry at all. What needs to change, and where do your customers have to invest actually to meet the customer need or the customer's desire to be in the center and have a full service from OEM and dealer?
Well, I think that's a very, very critical question. And of course, what you mentioned for dealers is absolutely spot on, right? You need people that have different capabilities from what they had in the past, and at the same time, it's really difficult to attract them. And I think it's also similar if you look at the OEM side, because also the OEMs, they are facing this shift in the capabilities that they need. Of course, on the one hand, in the R&D departments and so on, when we are talking about shifting from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles, but also when we think about sales, and I think, Scott, your point before about being lucky to start with a clean slate and kind of without all the history. Of course, the opposite is true for most of the OEMs, right? So, and now you have an organization that is prepared to work in a certain way, to work with importers, to work with dealers, and they are relying on dealers to do a lot of things for you, right? So the OEMs in the past, they never really had to think about what is the right transaction price for a particular customer. They were relying on the dealers to do that. Now, more and more OEMs are moving towards an agency model, where suddenly as an OEM, you have to think about what is the right transaction price for a particular customer, because this is now the OEM job and not longer the dealer's job, right? And so I think that's a lot of changes in capabilities that they need, and of course, a lot of it is driven through digital and analytics. I mean, if you, as an OEM, you want to hit the right price for each customer, you cannot meet each customer in person like a dealer can, because it's just from a scale perspective not possible. So you need to do it with data and analytics, and that's a key skill set that, of course, now our industry is competing with all the other industries about, and especially the friends at Google probably will want to steal away a lot of the digital talent that the automotive industry actually needs. So I think this is the key shift that we as an industry need to make.
I would disagree that we want to steal talent. I think we should provide talent to all the industries we work with. But now taking all this, and it seems like we are hiding a little bit behind complexity, right? Our industry is complex, but the consumer doesn't care about that. Scott, when you work from a cleaner slate perspective, and you're now choosing your partners, what capabilities do you look for in a partner to be the right partner for the Polestar business?
It's a really good question. It's actually quite complex in terms of who the partners are. I mean, one of the things that we do, I think, which is genuine from a Polestar point of view, we want partners who sort of share our vision. Because as we've talked about, you know, we're going to go through changes in industry, and that change is not going to be the next 2-3 years. The next decade really is kind of the change. So we want partners that are going to be looking longer term, but also share the fact that we are going to change. We have to change. There's a flexibility that is required. I think key to that, and I think it's a really good point in terms of the types of people who work in the industry. We need to change that. You know, we need to look at, I mean, as was referenced earlier on, it's not an industry that people want to work in necessarily, because traditionally it's unsociable hours, it's difficult, it's hard. And we need to change that. We need to look at more flexibility in terms of reduced hour contracts. We need to look at different ways of attracting different people to the industry, because I think certainly globally there's a certain type of stereotype who works in the automotive industry, and if I'm honest, I don't think the industry has the trust of the customer in the same way perhaps other industries do. So yeah, we're looking for people who are going to understand that we need to change, understand that will require a different approach to where we've been before, but also we do need, and this is something that we've learned at Polestar, is that, and certainly from my point of view, coming from a traditional OEM background, you become reliant on what a retail network provides. And the retail network provides a lot of services, and often the retail network is almost paper in the cracks, because you know, sometimes OEMs make mistakes, as we all do. You know, that retail network is almost that shock absorber between the OEM and the customer. When you take that kind of sort of middle agent away, it puts a lot of pressure on the OEM, and I'm going through that relearning experience as to we take ownership of a lot of those challenges that traditionally I would be sort of reliant on a retail network to cover off. So I think in summary to your question, it's about visionary, share our overall sort of mission, if you like, which is significant, but flexibility, but ultimately the customer is still at the heart of the journey. And that is something that we need to have absolute paramount focus on.
Bringing that passion to the customer is something in a customer relationship, and at the car dealership, the customer feels, right? If he has a passionate salesperson, he will feel it and he will see that this is something that he can rely on, will trust that decision probably a little bit more. Maria Grazia, taking what Scott just said, looking at your dealers and the capabilities, he said dealers are the shock absorber between the OEM and the customer. So if Stellantis wants to take more ownership of the process, you will ultimately give up some of the shock absorber capabilities. How do you look at it, and what do you want your dealers to partner, and what is the right amount of partnering which you want to do? What communication do you want to take? And what does the partner need to do for you to actually still provide the great experience to the customer?
So the question you have formulated is not easy, it's complex. I want to touch 2 points that you have answered so far, because somebody said at the beginning, the dealer feeds the missing information that the customers, or the 63% of customers, found online. So this is the first informative role that must be very sensitive, because each customer is unique and each decision is unique. And so each customer has a gap, and the dealer is there to complete the information needs, but not only. You also touched the point of the salesperson. And Andrea Barchetti can confirm that the sales profile, the salesperson profile, is very much evolving and will evolve. We had so far very good, agile and smart people knowing the product, being very smart in front of the customer, trying to close a deal based on a car that was in a showroom, based on a good evaluation of the trade-in, based on a good explanation of leasing and stuff like that. This is not enough any longer, and maybe only partially needed. We need a sensitive sales person or sales interaction with the customer. And here I get to your question. Dealers are and will always be, in my opinion, among the most important customers' touch point with the brand for product, for service, for mobility, all in all, but also for brand experience. Oh, the proposition is quite complex. You said the shock absorption will move from dealer to OEM. Actually, we absorb already now many shocks. The shock distribution will be different, but we will always share shocks with dealers, I guess so. Having said this, the relationship and the value chain that also has been mentioned has to insist on increasing quality. The word quality has been inflated. It would be nice to have a panel, maybe not in a IAA, but maybe to have a panel about quality and definition, new definition of quality in automotive business. You know that when a word is too much inflated, we forget the meaning. And quality in automotive business is very much related to profit, because it's very concretely related to business, to satisfaction, to loyalty, and so to profitability. Anyway, we are in the middle of a transformation, and we will search together with our dealers and together with the stakeholders, relevant stakeholders such as Google, such as business partners and research company. We very much need analytics. I agree with Jakob, and this is a big challenge. So we will find together the right balance in trading between online and offline, and the role of the dealer is not only the offline one. It will continue to be the online one as of today, but very much evolving in a seamless omni-channel experience. I don't know if we can still speak about marketplace, or we have to start speaking about platforms. It is a big topic to be answered. You said how many dealers will you have or something. I will not answer with a number. We will have dealers that will be able to express the brand in the market, that will express the brand in front of the customer, physically and digitally. And we will have the dealers that will grow with us in this transformation where everything is changing.
We have, again, there is tons of information and tons of thoughts how complex our business is. Let's remind ourselves, the customer doesn't really care. He wants to have a seamless experience. Now, the goal is to rewire a plane in a very fast-moving industry and a fast-moving business, while missing some key aspects of what we actually need, data analytics, the talent that wants to work in our industry and has the capabilities to bring with them, which is not the traditional auto or car salesman probably, or car saleswoman, but probably somebody who has a bit broader view on how we treat customers in this industry. So overall, there's tons of things to do, and I think we couldn't answer quite the question of what the future really looked like. But I hope we are getting to the point where we understand that we need to change. Maria Grazia just said that the quality that we deliver, we might have to redefine it. Andreas, I think we also in the car dealership, there are different definitions of quality. There's a lot of pressure, but at the end of the day, we have to deliver quality to the consumers. With that, thank you all for the broad perspectives around automotive retail. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Maria Grazia. Thank you, Scott, for joining us virtually. Thank you, Jacob, and thank you, Andreas, for joining us here on stage.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening in. I hope we could guide you a little bit into direction and dissect this problem a little bit. But overall, there seems to be tons of things we can still do to provide a seamless experience across the board for our customers. And I think my next car I'm going to buy, I like the digital process, and I'm going to stick with that one. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I may ask you to leave the stage, this room. Those gentlemen will still be here, coming probably out left or right of the stage for further questions if you want to approach them directly. Our next session will be here in a few minutes at 12 o'clock sharp. So if you want to join us for mobility services, user-centric mobility services, stick around or come back in just a few minutes, and see you in a bit. Thank you.